WWE fans were given one of the most intense confrontations of the night when Bron Breakker and Oba Femi finally found themselves standing across from each other with nowhere left to hide. What started as a question about who truly represents the future of WWE quickly turned into a powerful statement about confidence, ambition, and the changing landscape of the company. Breakker entered the segment clearly determined to make his case. He has built a reputation as one of the most physically imposing young stars on the roster, and after spending months competing at a high level, he has every reason to believe that he belongs in the conversation about WWE's next generation of top stars. But Femi has been creating his own momentum, and his recent victory over Brock Lesnar at SummerSlam gave him an entirely different level of credibility. When these two finally came face to face, it felt less like an ordinary confrontation and more like the beginning of a rivalry that could define the next chapter of both men's careers. A new era begins. Femi's victory over Lesnar was the moment that changed the conversation around him. Defeating a superstar of Lesnar's stature immediately placed Femi in a different category, but what made the moment even more significant was the way Lesnar acknowledged him afterward. For a young wrestler trying to establish himself, receiving that kind of recognition from a veteran with such a legendary reputation can become a defining moment. Suddenly, Femi was no longer simply another promising talent waiting for his opportunity. He had proven that he could stand across from one of WWE's most established names and perform under enormous pressure. That success naturally created questions about what would come next. Could Femi become one of the company's central stars? Could he eventually become a world champion? And perhaps most importantly, was he now the future that everyone had been waiting for? Those questions were clearly on Breakker's mind when he stepped into the ring. Breakker wants his answer. Bron Breakker did not appear willing to simply watch Femi receive all the attention. Breakker has spent a considerable amount of time building his own reputation, and his aggressive style has made him one of the most recognizable young performers in WWE. From his earliest appearances, Breakker has carried himself like someone who expects to be at the top. That confidence is part of what makes him compelling, but it also means that being overlooked is unlikely to sit well with him. When he demanded an answer about who should be considered the future of WWE, it was clear that the question was not simply about Femi, it was about Breakker himself. He wanted recognition for everything he had accomplished, and wanted Femi to acknowledge that there was another young star standing directly in his way. Paul Heyman changes the mood. Before Femi even entered the scene, Paul Heyman appeared and immediately changed the atmosphere. Heyman has always been known for understanding the power of timing, and his presence made the confrontation feel much bigger than a simple argument between two competitors. Instead of giving Breakker the straightforward answer he wanted, Heyman challenged the question itself. That forced Breakker to sit with the uncertainty for a moment. The segment became less about who could make the loudest statement and more about who could remain composed when the pressure increased. Heyman's involvement also added another layer because of his previous association with Breakker. Seeing him standing in the middle of such an important moment naturally raised questions about where his loyalty and attention now lie. Heyman has one more surprise. Just as the tension appeared ready to boil over, Heyman stepped in with news that changed the situation completely. Rather than allowing Breakker and Femi to fight on their own terms, he revealed that the two men would have an official match scheduled for September 6th at State Farm Arena in Atlanta. Suddenly, the confrontation had a destination. Breakker did not need to chase Femi around the arena or try to prove himself through an impulsive confrontation. The answer would eventually come inside the ring, where both men would have the opportunity to settle the rivalry through competition. That announcement also gave the entire segment a sense of purpose. Everything that happened on Raw now felt like the opening chapter of a much larger story, the handshake that raised questions. Perhaps the most interesting visual came immediately afterward. Heyman shook Breakker's hand before turning toward Femi and doing the same with him. On the surface, it might have looked like a simple gesture of respect, but wrestling audiences naturally look for meaning in moments like this. Given Heyman's history with Breakker, seeing him acknowledge Femi in the same way created an obvious question about where the relationship between these men is heading. Was Heyman simply being professional, or was he subtly recognizing Femi as the star with the momentum right now? The moment did not provide a clear answer, and that uncertainty may be exactly what makes it so effective. WWE has created another layer to the rivalry without needing to explain everything immediately. September 6 becomes the real test. The confrontation ultimately accomplished something important. It moved the rivalry from verbal competition to an actual match. Breakker believes he belongs among WWE's elite young stars, while Femi believes his recent accomplishments have already placed him at the front of that line. Neither man appears willing to step aside. That makes their upcoming match much more meaningful than a standard singles contest. It represents a battle for momentum, credibility, and perhaps even the unofficial title of WWE's next major superstar. Both men have different strengths, different personalities, and completely different ways of carrying themselves. Breakker brings explosive intensity, while Femi has shown an increasingly controlled confidence. When those qualities finally collide in Atlanta, the result could have major consequences for both careers. The future is watching. What makes this storyline so exciting is that WWE has two young stars who genuinely appear to believe they are destined for greatness. Breakker does not want to become another name on the roster. Femi does not appear satisfied with simply being a promising prospect. Both men want to reach the highest level, and neither seems interested in allowing the other to take the spotlight. That is the foundation of a strong wrestling rivalry. It is not simply about winning one match. It is about proving who belongs at the center of the company's future. After everything that happened on Raw, the question is no longer whether Breakker and Femi will eventually collide. That part is settled. Now the only question is, who will walk away from their match with the stronger claim to being WWE's next big star? And with September 6th approaching, the anticipation is only going to grow.